Well, one day after President Trump is sworn into office, the future of oil and gas remains in the air for some operators. Late last year, former President Biden announced a final rule for oil and gas companies to pay a federal fee if they emit methane above certain levels. We spoke to the Permian Basin Petroleum Association on their thoughts regarding what happens next.
The Permian Basin, home to upstream operations. Months before President Trump took office, former President Biden issued a rule where the federal government will charge a tax if your operations result in high methane emissions. It's all thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act, where the EPA implements that law.
The privately held companies have been getting pressure from those in favor of ESG metrics, environmental stewardship and governance metrics, to try to improve environmental impact and standards out in the field. So a lot of those companies have been working for a good while to try to reduce their emissions, not necessarily because it is impactful to greater production, but because it looks better to stakeholders and investors.
Robertson says methane is a valuable product and the industry would prefer it captured and sent to the market as opposed to being flared.
Because of that, companies that are more reliant on stakeholders from outside their companies, those publicly traded companies, have been focusing on this issue for a while. And so they've already been making the investments to try to improve their operations.
Now there's concern if that tax stays in place, wells that are subject to the rule could be shut in, which would lower production. Not only does that affect operators, but also the economy, service companies, and local tax entities. Last week, Attorney General Ken Paxton sued the Biden administration in an effort to prevent the rule from taking effect.
Should we be supporting these companies and trying to help them do the best, most responsible operations they can out in the field? I would say that's what we should be working towards, and I don't think the waste emissions charge gets us there.
Robertson says even if Paxton is successful, it's still going to take time to undo the rules once they're already in place.
So they are betting that by the time it really does get overturned, if it does get overturned by a court, they're going to have accomplished what they wanted to accomplish anyway, and they're going to change an operation or a culture or whatever it might be in whatever industry they're regulating, and so ultimately they still win.
So what comes next? President Trump has signed several executive orders in place, with many that focus on the energy sector. However, there's no word yet on an order that focuses on methane emissions charges. But just a few days ago, Congressman August Pfluger and Senator Ted Cruz filed legislation called the Natural Gas Tax Repeal Act to repeal the natural gas tax. So we'll see what comes out of that legislative session.